Believe it or not, this mask is made of old newspaper and paste. Underneath its gay paint and decoration, it's solid and strong. To make one, this is all you need: newspaper, paste, perhaps clay, a box of scraps, a tray, bowl, spoon, and scissors. You begin by making a mold the shape of your face. And make sure that hers fits by rolling up a newspaper and measuring around her face. Bob will make a mask to cover his whole head. He begins by stuffing a big bag with paper. John stuffed a bag about the size of his head, and now he sticks on a nose. Anne filled in her paper circle, and now she puts on bulging eyes. Bob finishes his face with a big open mouth. Alec molds. It's going to be a pig. To prevent the clay from sticking to the newspaper mask, he must cover it with pieces of wax paper. Now the molds are finished, and they begin the real masks. Anne mixes up the paste while the others tear up newspaper in inch-wide strips and soak it in water. The strips of wet newspaper are laid over the mold until it's covered. After one layer of wet paper, a layer of paste is smeared over the whole thing. Then another layer of paper is put over the paste. Bob uses colored comics this time to make sure that he doesn't miss any spots. 4 layers of paper are put on and 4 layers of paste. Then extras, such as ears, can be added. These are stuck on with more wet paper and paste. To make it look like skin on his pig, Alec puts on the last layer with wet strips of paper toweling. Then the molds are set on a shelf to dry. After 2 days comes the exciting moment when the masks are to be taken off the molds. It works! The mask comes off clean and dry, and the mold is left behind. It's really hard and strong. John gets right to work with the scissors, cutting out a mouth. Next comes the painting. The children use thick tempera color. Each mask gets its own particular character from its colors and lines. Here's a chance for imagination. To bring out the color and preserve the finish, the masks are coated all over with white shellac. The final touches are added from the scrap box. And there they are. Who would guess that they're just last week's papers with a little paste and paint added? You can make a mask for a play like this rooster, or for a fancy dress party. Or you can make it just for the fun of making it, and you can keep it just because you like it.
There's nothing magic about a camera. The camera only seems to be a magical device. It can be used by a child to photograph a friend, an artist to capture the sweeping beauty of life, a scientist to record that which he cannot see. It can bridge time and space. It does all this completely in the dark. But really, there's nothing magical about a camera. It's simply a precise instrument with a few basic parts that operates on some simple principles. Let's clear up one point right away. Cameras come in many shapes and sizes, but they all operate on the same basic principles. Like your eyes, all cameras require light, which shines on the subject and is reflected by it. By looking through a viewfinder, you can aim your camera at the subject you wish to photograph. The lens gathers the light reflected from the subject and focuses it to form an image. The image is formed inside the camera body, which is basically a light-tight box. When you have film in your camera, the lens focuses the light on the light-sensitive film, which makes an invisible image called an exposure. The image becomes visible after it's been processed by chemicals. With instant film, the chemicals are part of the film unit. After you make an exposure, the film advance moves the exposed film out of the way and replaces it with unexposed film. This film advance may be a lever, knob, slide, or motor, depending on how your camera is designed. The basic camera requires two other parts: the lens opening and a shutter. The lens opening regulates the amount of light that enters the camera. The shutter controls the length of time the light enters. In most simple cameras, both lens opening and shutter have been preset to permit a good exposure, either with sunlight or with a flash. That's it. That's basically all there is to a camera. They all work on the same principles. Light reflected from a subject passes through the lens, is controlled by the lens opening and the shutter, and is focused on a piece of film. A viewfinder helps aim the camera. A film advance replaces exposed with unexposed film. Now, let's take a closer look at each of these and how they can be controlled to affect the pictures you take. Although simple cameras allow you to take pictures in sunlight or indoors with a flash, there are other cameras that you can adjust to take pictures in a wider variety of lighting conditions. Since film always wants to see the same amount of light to get a good picture, when the lighting on your subject varies, you can adjust either the size of the lens opening or the length of time the shutter is open, or both. For example, you increase the size of the lens opening to let in more light when the light is dim, or decrease it to let in less light when it's bright. We refer to the size of the openings by numbers called F numbers. Some adjustable cameras require the photographer to set the F number for each situation. You can also vary the shutter speed to control the length of time the light strikes the film. These times are printed on the camera as whole numbers, but they refer to fractions of a second. For example, 250 means that the shutter is open for 1/250th of a second. 30 means it's open for 1/30th of a second. The longer the shutter is open, the longer the light strikes the film. So, with an adjustable camera and bright light, you can use a small lens opening or a fast shutter speed, or various combinations of the two. In dim light, you need a large lens opening, slow shutter speed, or both. Some adjustable cameras simply have 2 or 3 exposure settings represented by symbols. Use the sun symbol for pictures outdoors in bright daylight. Use the EX symbol for overcast daylight or brightly spotlighted events, and use the XL setting for taking pictures of dimly lighted subjects. Other cameras have an electric eye, which measures the amount of light reflected from the subject and automatically sets the lens opening or shutter speed for you. Many cameras also require focusing, which is adjusting the camera for the precise camera-to-subject distance. Some of these cameras have focusing aids. The more common aids are the distance scale, symbols, rangefinder, and through-the-lens focusing. If your camera has a distance scale, set it for the number of feet or meters between you and your subject. With many cameras, you can estimate the approximate distance by setting the focusing adjustment on a mountain range for subjects that are far away, or on a head and shoulder for subjects very close to you, or various other subjects in between. With one type of rangefinder, as you look through the viewfinder, an out-of-focus subject will appear as a double image. When focused, there's only one. A second type of rangefinder shows a split image. Focusing brings the two halves together. As you look through the viewfinder of a camera with through-the-lens focusing, what you see is what you get. An out-of-focus subject will appear fuzzy. Focusing makes the fuzzy image sharp. The need to focus accurately becomes more important as you increase the size of the lens opening. A small lens opening can produce sharp pictures of subjects about 5 feet away from the camera to as far as you can see. Simple cameras have these small lens openings and therefore do not require focusing. Adjustable cameras enable you to select even smaller or much larger lens openings. As you increase the size of the lens opening, you decrease the range of distance that is in focus. This range, called depth of field, is very narrow with a large lens opening. Therefore, large lens openings require more accurate focusing. That's all there is to a camera. Light reflected by a subject passes through a lens, is controlled by the lens opening and shutter, and creates an invisible image on film. There are several types of film: film for slides, film for prints, and film for movies. Each must be processed by chemicals to make that image visible. Instant print film has the chemicals right in the film unit, and you see the picture in minutes. Conventional film for prints is first processed to a negative. Then it's put in a special holder, and light is shined through the film, and the lens focuses the image on photographic paper. The paper is treated with chemicals, and the result is a visible picture. After slide film is developed, it's mounted in special mounts and sent to you as slides. You can project these or look at them in a viewer. Besides film for prints and slides, there's also film for making movies. Movie film is longer and narrower than film for still pictures, but a motion picture camera is basically the same as a still camera. The movie camera also needs a viewfinder, lens, lens opening, shutter, film, and film advance. But in a movie camera, both the shutter and film advance are slightly different from those in a still camera. A movie camera shutter spins, and an open slit in the shutter crosses the film to let in the light to make a single picture. It does this 18 or 24 times a second. This means that each second, at least 18 frames of film must be moved into place behind the lens, held steady while the picture is taken, and then replaced by unexposed film. To move the film so rapidly and accurately, movie cameras have a motorized film advance which usually runs on batteries. The whirring sound you hear from a movie camera in operation comes from the motor advancing the film. After this movie film has been processed, it's projected. At least 18 separate pictures are flashed on the screen every second. Each is slightly different from the preceding one. The eye is unable to separate so many images and sees them as one continuous moving picture. So, there you have cameras in all forms, movie and still. They all need light, reflected from a subject through a lens controlled by a lens opening and a shutter focused on a piece of film. A viewfinder lets you see your subject. A film advance lets you get many pictures on one roll or packed film. A few basic parts, some simple principles. That's how all cameras work.